These are Nebraska corn farmers. They work in acres, not hours, harvesting the energy and climate solutions the world needs. We are proud to stand with you.
The success of tomorrow's soy industry depends on the actions we take today. The future is here, and the time to move is now.
Market Journal Television for Agricultural Business Decisions is a presentation of the University of Nebraska-Lincoln's Institute of Agriculture and Natural Resources in partnership with the Nebraska Rural Radio Association. Promotional support provided by the Nebraska Farmer Magazine and partial funding provided by the Nebraska Soybean Board and the Nebraska Corn Board.
Well, hi everyone, I'm Bryce Duskett, and thank you very much for joining us today on Market Journal. We are joining you from Seward, Nebraska, just outside of there at Briggs Feed Yard. On today's show, we'll be hearing from Mike Briggs himself as he breaks down what's happening in the cattle markets. Also on the broadcast, the Vice Chancellor for the Institute of Agriculture and Natural Resources, Mike Briggs. He will be discussing what's been happening with the Institute over the summer months and talk about how things are shaping up for the school year. We'll also get some updates from the Farm Service Agency regarding farm loan program changes that producers should know about. All of that is coming up on today's show. We'll begin here by getting a in-the-field update. Of course, harvest is going to be underway all across the Cornhusker State as those combines kicking up dust very soon. But right now, some producers are already cutting their corn to make silage. We had the opportunity to head out to Firth, Nebraska and take a look at how Prairie Land Dairies is getting ready to feed their herd over the next year.
For this week's In the Field update, we're near Firth, Nebraska, checking in on silage shopping. Levi Oldie from Oldie Family Farms is joining us. You guys operate Prairie Land Dairy up here in this area, operate dairies in Kansas as well. Tell me a bit about the operation and how silage shopping is going this year.
Yep, so we, myself, my dad, and my two older brothers kind of own and operate Oldie Family Farms. We have two dairies in Kansas and Prairie Land Dairy here in Firth. We have a heifer yard. So along with all that, we do we farm, that'd be Foremost Farms, part of the operation. We do all of our farming, chopping and manure spreading. So obviously we're up here today chopping some feed for cows.
Yep. So when did you start shopping? I assume you started in Kansas this year and worked your way north.
Yes, we started, we've probably been going almost 3 weeks now. Spent a couple weeks in Kansas. Got up here Sunday and hoping to be done possibly Saturday, but probably Sunday.
A little rain you encountered, but in general, crop conditions in southeast Nebraska, at least where we're standing here again near Firth, things are a little dry in places. As you get into the field, what are you seeing from the cab?
Well, the ground's dry, which being running the chopper and trucks is nice for getting around and getting things done. But we've been on mostly irrigated stuff, and it all has been really good. Probably the best feed we've seen since we've been up here in 2019 is when we started chopping, managing prairie land. So things are looking good.
You're running two choppers on this field, this irrigated field, as you're not visiting here today, Levi. How many semis do you have to run to keep up with those choppers?
We have four semis and trailers.
Okay.
4 per cutter. There's eight total. So
making a big pile of feed, that's for sure.
Yep.
When it comes to chopping perfect silage, what's kind of the science behind it? What are you looking for when you get into the fields?
Ideally, anymore, we would kind of like our silage, whole plant moisture from around 65, 63 to 68. That's kind of the number one. After that, kind of looking at, well, you want yield, you want a lot of grain. That's the biggest thing. After that, you're looking at starch. You would want plenty of starch for the cows to make milk, and then probably digestibility after that.
For somebody who's not been inside the cab of a silage chopper, what kind of technology is in there?
So these are equipped with GPS, row sense, header height. We also are running machine sync, and so both our cutters are talking to each other and sharing lines, guidance lines, and sharing yield data with each other and mapping coverage.
You're running 3 weeks at this point. What do you do to keep yourself occupied and I suppose focused in there as the days get long?
You know, it's you stay busy enough. I don't know. The days go by pretty fast, really. You're always paying attention to the trucks and the train and trying to keep from hitting anything. It keeps the guy busy in there.
Thanks to Levi for having us out there near Firth, Nebraska to take a look at how their silage operation was going. Moving on, last month the U.S. Department of Agriculture announced some changes to the Farm Service Agency's farm loan programs, changes that are intended to increase opportunities for farmers and ranchers to be financially viable. Market Journal's Bill Dodd is standing by with more on these developments. Bill?
Thanks, Bryce. These improvements are part of the Enhancing Program Access and Delivery for Farm Loans rule. Farm loan policy changes outlined in the Enhancing Program Access and Delivery for Farm Loans rule are designed to better assist borrowers to make strategic investments in enhancement or expansion of their agricultural operations. The three most notable policy changes include establishing a new low-interest installment set-aside program for financially distressed borrowers. Eligible financially distressed borrowers can defer up to one annual loan installment per qualified loan at a reduced interest rate, providing a simpler and expedited option to resolve financial distress in addition to FSA's existing loan service programs. Providing all eligible loan applicants access to flexible repayment terms that can increase profitability and help build working capital reserves and savings. By creating upfront positive cash flow, borrowers can find opportunities in their farm operating plan budgets to include a reasonable margin for increased working capital reserves and savings, including for retirement and education. Reducing additional loan security requirements to enable borrowers to leverage equity. This reduces the amount of additional security required for direct farm loans, including reducing the frequency borrowers must use their personal residence as additional collateral for a farm loan. FSA has also included additional data in its annual report to Congress to provide information that Congress, stakeholders, and the general public need to hold USDA accountable on the progress that has been made in improving services to underserved producers. This year's report shows FSA direct and guaranteed loans were made to a greater percentage of young and beginning farmers and ranchers, as well as improvements in the participation rates of minority borrowers. The report also highlights FSA's microplan programs, new focus on urban agriculture operations, and niche market lending, as well as increased support for producers seeking direct loans for farm ownership in the face of increasing land values across the country. FSA has a significant initiative underway to streamline and automate the farm loan program customer-facing business process. For over 26,000 producers who submit a direct loan application annually, FSA has made several impactful improvements, including the loan assistance tool that provides customers with an interactive, online, step-by-step guide to identifying the direct loan products that may be a better fit for their business needs and to understanding the application process. The online loan application, an interactive, guided application that is paperless and provides helpful features, including an electronic signature option, the ability to attach supporting documents such as tax returns, complete a balance sheet, and build a farm operating plan. Also included, an online direct loan repayment feature that relieves borrowers from the necessity of calling, mailing, or visiting a local USDA service center to pay a loan installment, as well as a simplified direct loan paper application reduced from 29 pages to 13 pages. Now, the USDA encourages all producers to reach out to their local FSA farm loan staff to ensure that they fully understand the wide range of loan and servicing options available to assist with starting, expanding, or maintaining their agricultural operation. And that's our FSA update this week. Back to you, Bryce.
All right, thank you very much, Sir Bill. We sure appreciate that update. Up next, we talk about the markets this week, putting a focus on the cattle side of things. Joining us at his feed yard, welcomed us out here, Mike Briggs from Briggs Feed Yard near Seward. Good to see you as always, sir.
It's been a while. Nice to see you.
It has. Last time you and I talked, we were going into the summer months back in May. You described yourself as cautiously optimistic. Things were looking good. Then August hit. What happened, Mike?
That's kind of a seasonal deal. Everybody knows that. Typically, we take a bigger dip in July than what we did. We kind of got through that in pretty good shape. But boy, after Labor Day, which is your last big beef holiday, it usually does a header. And it's kind of done exactly that. Cash is off. I think, I should have looked at my numbers, but I think we did a high of 315, 317 there in the beef. And we've dropped it all the way back to 287 last week. So that's a pretty big break. hopefully we can hang in here and not go much lower. I think it's going to be a little bit, but our seasonal, after we get through September, is to go up into the end of the year, and I think we got a chance at that.
Okay, well, speaking toward the end of the year, we're halfway through the 2024. Beyond that, people starting to talk about herd rebuilding, as we'll get the number coming out in January of where USDA pegs things at. But you look at the data, cattle on feed report, for example, all indications are we're not rebuilding the herd.
No.
Why is that?
You know, that's a great question. I've been told, you know, ranchers don't keep high-priced heifers. They keep the cheap heifers. The ranchers have had 3 or 4 really tough years because of drought. Now, they were also getting pretty good prices for their cattle, but it's been pretty tough, and they're making a lot of money right now, and they deserve it. I wish I was a new pickup salesman, because there are going to be a lot of new pickups sold, but I think that's the biggest reason is they need cash because they've had so many bad years, and they don't want to keep those high-priced heifer calves. They want to get rid of them. So I think that's a lot of it. Now, the one thing we've seen is a serious slowdown in the cow kill. So that's helped us out a little bit. We're not getting smaller, at least. We're kind of leveling out, but I don't see herd rebuilding. And your cattle on feed figures don't show any rebuilding because we've still haven't got under 100% on feed.
One of the things I wanted to bring up to you, because it seems like we talk about this every time in context of cattle markets, is economic factors, external things that are impacting the producer. If we look at demand, though, it doesn't seem like the producer is being impacted when it comes to what they're buying at the grocery store.
It's amazing to me. We as an industry never thought people would pay this much, and we've seen such a dramatic amount of inflation, and I feel bad for the consumer. I've never wanted beef to get to the point where it comes out of people's diets. And I think to some extent we've gotten there, but we've stayed in here a lot better than I thought we would. So demand has hung in here through this. So it's been great from that standpoint.
Right now visiting here in September, time to get the silage chopper going, wet corn too. Let's talk about feed prices. We're looking at record production across the nation when it comes to corn. How are you going to be looking at prices? Has to be kind of an optimistic area for you going into the next year.
It is so. I know all farmers out there will grimace, but it is so nice to get these feed costs down to where we can get our cost of gains back down under $1. That's going to be very beneficial for us in the feed yard industry, because that's how we make money, putting it on cheaper than we sell it. We're going to take in about everything we can take, and we're going to put up a lot of silage, because I'm not saying the corn is at a low, but we're pretty darn close. And I think whenever we do get that low, which is probably after the gut slot harvest, I think it'll just start grinding its way higher, because around the world things aren't that great. Things are pretty good here, but around the world things aren't great. So I think we're going to try to take advantage of that while we can.
What's your outlook on the next 12 months, filling the pens behind us, and just in general, I guess, feedlots? Are going to be able to keep things full?
I don't think so, but that's the interesting thing, and we were having this discussion on the conference call, and I've had this with my brokers, been kind of upset, and I was wrong, because I didn't do my research. Why we broke as hard as we broke, I just don't get it. Here you are, we've got fundamentals, they're not paying attention to fundamentals. Yeah, they are, because we haven't gotten under 100% cattle on feeding. And until we do that, why should the market go up? We've got just as many cattle. We've slaughtered less cattle than we did last year as a whole. But last week, which was a short week because of Labor Day, we actually slaughtered more than we did last year, and they're bigger. So we're putting pounds on the market like nobody's business. So until we get the pounds down, which I don't think that's going to change, especially with cheaper feed, but until we get numbers down, this market doesn't need to go anywhere. And I got once again commend the packers. They've managed supply very well, and they've got themselves back into a profitable position. So things, as far as they're concerned, are great. But I don't think this thing is going to just take off and rocket until we see cattle on feed numbers get down. I don't know when that is. Now, it shows we're going to have kind of a hole in December and January, because placements were down this summer, but I think we might see, it'll be interesting to see what we see for placements in August.
Well, the reports that came out, we got a viewer question about this, shows that Mexican feeder cattle imports up 27% year over year. They were high last year at this point. Why is that?
Well, you've got a drought in Mexico, and so they're moving the cattle this way. There's a lot of demand for feeder cattle right now because there's not a lot of them around. So that's what's made the whole Texas feeding industry. If Mexico, if they put a wall up and ban feeder cattle, the Texas feeding industry is going to have a problem. So that's just kind of what they feed.
Give me your outlook as we look to the next 3-4 months in front of us. Where are live and feeder cattle heading?
Well, like I said, we're gonna kind of go down here for a little bit. Our season will start sometime in October, where we usually go up into the end of the year. Hopefully we get back to the prices we're at in June. I don't know if we can, because once again, that depends on supply and demand, but I think we got a pretty good chance to get back up towards the highs by the end of the year, and I think that'll be pretty beneficial for everybody. At some point, I wish I knew what it was. I don't know when it is. Maybe it's May next year, but eventually we'll get these cattle on feed numbers down, and you might see fat cattle get dramatically higher. It's just a matter of if you have any of them.
Thanks to Mike for letting us come out and use his place as our background, and we appreciate him sharing some of his thoughts here when it comes to the cattle markets. Now, I do want to let you know, coming up next week, we will be out at Husker Harvest Days, and we'll be joined by Todd Holman from DTN. As always, we invite your questions here on the show, so if you have one for me to ask Todd, go ahead and email us or get in touch on social media, and I will pass your question right along. Up next, in the heart of corn and soybean country, just a few miles south of Nebraska City, lies an unusual ag enterprise, at least for here in Nebraska. The Vanderveens founded Nebraska Vegetable and Protein to bring fresh produce and Nebraska-raised salmon to their customers. You can read all about how they're raising salmon in the Cornhusker State, one of the most landlocked states in the Union, in the September issue of the Nebraska Farmer. It is that time of the show now where we check in on weather with Nebraska Extension ag climatologist and Market Journal's meteorologist, Eric Hunt. Eric's certainly been noticing some of those cool overnight temperatures this week, but we do know the heat is sticking around through most of the days. How are things shaping up, in particular as we gear up for Husker Harvest Days?
Well, you won't need your jacket Husker Harvest Days this year. This next week will be mostly dominated by upper-level ridging here across the north-central portion of the continent. We are going to be watching out for tropical development here across portions of the Bay of Campeche and the Gulf of Mexico that may be paying a visit somewhere in the central United States later this next week. Worth watching out for. Temperatures, though, are going to be quite warm across our region, including all of Nebraska. So expect temperatures probably in the upper 80s across northeastern Nebraska this week. Lower 90s will be dominant across southeastern and central Nebraska. Mid to upper 90s across most of western Nebraska, with areas right around Chatter, unfortunately likely getting around 100 degrees again on Monday and possibly Tuesday. We also are likely to see basically no measurable precipitation this week. At least that's the forecast right now. The wild card would be, of course, if we do get some tropical development down here in the Gulf that might make its way a bit further west and toward the northwest up into our region, then it's possible that portions of eastern Nebraska could pick up some additional beneficial precipitation by the end of this next week. And there will be at least a chance of precipitation across western Nebraska on Friday and Saturday this next week. But right now, there is essentially no real significant chance of picking up more than a tenth of an inch of rain for most of this region. Temperatures likely going to be quite warm as we head into the third week of September, with above average favored by the CPC. And again, this is likely to be well above average as we head into the third week of September. And right now, of course, they are favoring below average precipitation for most of the central U.S. Of course, the wild card being any tropical development down here in the Gulf that may throw this, wrench into this. But right now, that's the official outlook from the CPC. Again, some wishful thinking. There might be a trough moving into the Four Corners region by the 20th of September that might eject out the central plains and produce some showers and thunderstorms with some beneficial precipitation for the central plains and western corn belt. That's 2 weeks out, though. It definitely is a little bit wishful thinking on this part, but maybe we'll get lucky and that'll come to fruition. In terms of recent precipitation, again, we saw some pretty heavy amounts of rain just north of Wakefield up here in Dixon County. There's some pockets of heavier rain across southeastern Nebraska, especially between Beatrice and Pawnee City. Most of Nebraska, though, saw less than half inch of rain this last week, and some places in western Nebraska saw basically nothing. Again, we continue to see things degrade on the U.S. drought monitor. We saw additional expansion of moderate drought and abnormal dryness across southeastern Nebraska, basically almost making its way up the Platte River. Saw some moderate drought introduced across portions of Burton and Cumming counties, and more abnormal dryness expanded into north central Nebraska around Ainsworth. Again, this is kind of a central U.S. problem right now. We've just seen a lot of degradation here across a lot of the central U.S. This is starting to cause some problems on some of the riverways, particularly the Mississippi. And again, if you look at vegetation conditions, things are going downhill across a lot of the country. Southeastern Nebraska, north central Nebraska, they'll show up as particular hot spots for degradation here in the last month or so. And for soil moisture, again, if we look at just areas that are under the 30th percentile, which is pretty much anything that shows with the color here, Eastern Nebraska, a lot of western Iowa is showing up as areas where we've seen just precipitous declines in soil moisture in the last month or so. Soil temperatures right now mostly in the mid to upper 70s across the state. And if we look at temperatures last week or so, they've ranged from 34 to 102. Biggest rainfall winter was Wakefield. A lot of places saw nothing. Nebraska 31, Colorado 21. Thanks. Back to you, Bryce.
All right, thank you very much, Eric. We do appreciate you sharing that update. Finally, today, let's take a look back at some of our time there at the Gudmunden Sandhills Laboratory open house a few weeks ago. While we were there, we were able to catch up with the Vice Chancellor of the Institute of Agriculture and Natural Resources at the university, that is Mike Boehm. During our time together, we discussed what was happening around the state through the summer months. Certainly a busy time for the staff, and we also previewed the academic year at the university. Good to see you, sir. Looking forward to hearing about some of the activities coming up this fall. But before we do that, I suppose we best go back and talk about all the activities that take place during the summer. Did you get a chance to go out to some field days?
Oh, yeah, absolutely, Bryce. A lot of field days. So this kind of, once graduation hits, you're in field day season and fair season. So that's pretty much 90 days of the summer for most of us. So wheat field days, small grain field days take place in June. So there's a busy time from about June 6th over in Fairbury, and jumping over to the Panhandle that ends up maybe the 20th of June, something like that. And then August is pretty busy, and a lot of stuff goes on like that third week of August. We've got new faculty orientation. Of course, we had we always have the annual IANR Rhodes Scholar, ROADS. So we take new faculty and administrators out across Nebraska. That was a bumper crop. We had 32 new folks on the bus, which was just fantastic and really great. We always go from Lincoln to Scottsbluff. Sometimes we go over to Nebraska City and then get across like we did a bit with a year ago with Chancellor Bennett and Mrs. Bennett. And then in August, we have the Gudmunden Sandhills Laboratory field day, which, anytime you get to go out to the Sandhills and just, hear the wind and see the ranchers and have a chance to talk, it's incredible. Panhandle has a crop field day, so that was amazing. And then this year, too, Rourke Pullman out of Sutherland pulled together the master irrigators from Colorado, Kansas. Actually, we had them remotely connected in from Auburn University, from Florida. So really thinking about how do we take things like the TAPS program and turn that into a national program. And of course, Nebraska's leading the way on that front. And then while all that's happening, we've got students coming back. 3,300 students in Kasner, and Dean Hang Moss and Kasner and her team just do such an incredible job. But we're still waiting on September 6th. We'll get the final numbers, but I don't want to jinx anything. It's looking really good right now, and most excited about our new students, but our returning students. All-time retention numbers are expected. So I think with some optimism, maybe in the 8 branding seasons and calving seasons that I've been in Nebraska, we've been on a bit of an enrollment slide, and I think this year we're going to break that, which is exciting. So, and of course, Husker Harvest Day is coming up. That kind of signals the end of our summer. That'll be, we have a big deal out there on the 10th of September. And just lots of cool stuff going on. Those are just some highlight reels of the summer past.
Well, on the enrollment highlights, as you shared, I want to ask you this. In 2024, there's always a lot of conversation about higher education, Mike, and you're ingrained in a lot of those conversations as we look at the university structure broadly, and there's a lot of different options for students today. So what's the sales pitch between Kasner, also NCTA out in Curtis?
Yeah.
What's the pitch for getting students interested in ag careers and then in particular studying within Nebraska?
Yeah, Bryce, well, I think, for me, maybe it's unconventional. I don't know where I picked this up. Maybe it's because I was a first-generation college kid. Parents didn't go to college. Grandparents didn't go to college. So grew up in a very blue-collar kind of working-class neighborhood, and you don't know where you're at in the pecking order socioeconomic-wise until you go off, if you get lucky, to go to college. And I guess I really feel like we need to meet learners wherever they're at. That's kind of number one. Not all learners. Maybe my time in the military, my 21 years there, maybe that also helped me form this perspective that learners, we're all learners. We all take different paths. I'm through and through a Husker, so I'm very competitive. I think we make the case when I talk with students and families about making a decision. I think NCTA is part of our family, so about 20% of the students at NCTA will come over to Kasner and pursue additional, but a lot of those students, they're 4 semesters of classes and experiential learning, they're going back to the farm or the ranch. And so when I talk with students, I talk about how we distinguish ourselves at the land grant university. So you know this because your wife is from around those parts, but the fact that we have the Lou Ranch at NCTA, a 2,100 acre experiential ranch in amazing cattle country. I talk about Gudmunden Sandhills Laboratory, that's 2.5 hours from Curtis. I talk about U.S. Meat Animal Research Center and the Great Plains Veterinary Education Center, and so vet tech students that can connect in there. On the city campus or on the Lincoln campus, east or city, I talk to students that want to be large animal veterinarians, but they've never been around cattle because they grew up in Omaha or Cleveland or Detroit. Wow, we can actually use the system and get them over to NCTA and get them up to Gudmunden and get some of that experiential learning. So when it comes to our ace in the hole at the land grant, it's just this amazing network that reaches across Nebraska, and it's our connection with the people who produce our food, our fuel, our feed, our fiber. So, good luck to the competition.
If you'd like to keep up with all the things that Mike was talking about within the Institute, we invite you to visit their website. It is simply ianr.unl.edu. Well, that's about all the time we have for this week's broadcast, but a couple of reminders for you. If you missed one of our stories this week or a previous one, be sure you're following Market Journal on YouTube and on social media, where we invite you to join in on the conversation. If you're looking for more ways to watch this program, you can also find us on your smart TV by downloading an app called Acres TV. I mentioned this earlier in the show. Next week, we'll be joining you from Husker Harvest Days near Grand Island. So if you're stopping by Husker Harvest Days, and I know many of you are, be sure to stop our crew and say hi as you're out there at the show. We hope to see you back here on this broadcast next week. But until then, I'm Bryce Duskett, wishing you a safe and productive week.
Join Market Journal online at marketjournal.unl.edu. You can also follow us on Twitter, Instagram, and Facebook. Promotional support is provided by the Nebraska Farmer Magazine. Market Journal is produced by the University of Nebraska-Lincoln's Institute of Agriculture and Natural Resources.